From baggage claim to pajamas in 10 minutes. Erie International Airport. Fly with ERI.com.
Fly Erie International Airport to Charlotte on American Airlines, your nonstop gateway to the world. Also, we have Breeze Airways flying nonstop to Orlando and Tampa, Florida. A great low-cost carrier providing excellent service to the regional community. Fly Erie International for your travel needs.
Fly with ERI.com.
You have been called
to do good,
to feed the hungry,
to love with action,
to be a light in the darkness,
to love your neighbor,
to teach wisdom,
to walk humbly,
to love mercy,
to care for the least of these.
Will you accept the call?
This is our city.
Our mission.
Visit eriecitymission.org/volunteer to accept the call today.
Welcome to TalkErie.com's Joel Natale Show, Erie, Pennsylvania's daily podcast. Every day, we tackle the biggest issues that the Erie, PA region faces. Stay informed and involved as we advance the narrative of Erie. Now, here's Joel Natale.
We're glad to have with us here in studio Jeremy Young, the CEO of Federal Resources Corporation. Jeremy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you very much. It's great to be back in here again and a little more room without having Lath and Tina in here either, right?
We want to start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. You're an Erie kid. Tell us how you came up. And I especially want to know, what was it about your growing up that got you interested in technology?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great way to get even started. Joel, I appreciate that. It's kind of funny because with the stuff that we do, I would sit there and say, in this space, doing tech and working with the government, we all tend to get here by accident, right? It's not like we grew up sitting there saying we want to be I want to be a firefighter like my dad or a police officer, but no, we end up being tech people in the government space. So
wow.
So somewhere you divert a little bit, right?
Sure.
But yeah, no, real quick. From my side, I grew up here. I'm born and bred this way in Erie. And with Erie, it's kind of one of those things where it's not, where you went to college at or where you went to high school at. It goes all the way back where you went to grade school at, and then people can pretty much peg you.
Okay.
And so I always tell them, I'm like, okay, I did my undergrad. I finished my undergrad at Clarion University. I went to prep for high school.
Okay.
And I was a Blessed Sacrament kid. So you already pretty much know where I'm at.
Now, did you do any sports at Blessed Sacrament in that prep?
Yeah. I was actually a baseball player.
Oh, nice.
Growing up, yeah. So that was a lot of fun doing that, and I got to learn the way of Coach Stan Brzezicki over here at prep and doing all that, and then I was fortunate enough to go play college as well.
Oh, where'd you play? At Clarion?
I played at Clarion.
Nice.
I finished up at Clarion, and then I couldn't throw a baseball 95 miles an hour. I couldn't hit it 500 feet, and I didn't run a 4.40. So luckily I focused in on the books and worked on getting a degree and going that route.
But think about it. Isn't there, this is a teachable moment for folks. Having that sports, having the discipline of being under that coach and being with your players, it does make you more productive, even in your academics.
Oh,
especially in your academics.
No, absolutely. You get used to the days.
Mm-hmm.
It's an early morning, and pretty much the regiment. And I'm sure people will understand this one. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. You're starting. You go to school. You do your classes. You end up at practice at the end of the day. You finish up there, and then you go do study hall or do your work, and you eventually go to sleep. Right? And you do that over and over and over again. And one of the things I'll sit there. It's like I learned a long time ago by that experience was I kind of use it just in my own kind of mantra today. It's around it's not practice that makes perfect. It's perfect practice that makes perfect.
Huh.
So it's one of those. And sometimes I find myself chasing that one a little too much at days. But you get there, and it's sort of along the same thing of like the Vince Lombardi. It's if you go after perfection, you'll eventually achieve excellence, kind of thing. But
so really setting the bar high.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so with that was my upbringing here, and when I graduated from Clarion, when I was in Clarion or at Clarion, I had a fantastic opportunity to be an intern for this little company called Hewlett Packard.
Oh my!
And part of
that. What was your degree in? What did you end up?
So I had a lot of different degrees along the way. I kind of went from all the way from day one. There's a piece of paper that says I was a mathematics major. Then somewhere along the way it was engineering, and then somewhere it changed to business, and then part of that it ended up being marketing. And but I do make that joke of sitting there saying it, as things, I refocus some of the balance of the social aspect of college and the intent of college at times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, no, actually I ended up, luckily having an internship at Hewlett Packard. That really was one of those moments that it pretty much changed the trajectory of your life.
Where did they send you?
Washington, D.C.
So you were in D.C., and they are obviously a big government contractor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I had no idea that the U.S. government buys what they buy and what kind of stuff they buy. And
so just tons and tons of like laptops. I mean, were you?
It's absolutely insane.
Okay,
it's absolutely insane. I equate it because basically we all look at the U.S. federal government from a purchasing perspective of just being the U.S. government buying stuff or having employees. If you break down the components of each one of these departments, like the Department of Agriculture, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, Health and Human Services, if they actually reported as a company, they would be the largest companies on the planet.
Wow.
And these folks, we just call them the U.S.
government.
Right. And so that was one of the eye openers for me. It was just understanding actually the scale of what was going on in that world.
Yeah, even a smallish department might be $40 billion. And you think about, what our Fortune 500 company does, what, $2.5 billion a quarter or something like that? Maybe they're doing $10 billion a year.
Isn't that?
It's blows your mind.
It does when you really take a look at it. And it's great because, again, I mean, it's the jobs, the services, the innovation that the government is responsible for that comes out to stuff we see every single day, right? Which has always been a fascinating thing for me. A bunch of my friends with their careers. I mean, it wasn't uncommon for folks to be a teacher or be a pharmaceutical sales rep in this zip code.
Yeah.
And my experience was more global. Number one, because the sun doesn't set on the U.S. government for some reason, right? And the other piece is that you get so much experience in all these different facets. If you want to have that conversation of finance with the Treasury, I can do that. I have a background in doing that with energy, with defense, with all these different things, healthcare. And you get that type of exposure. It's really a fascinating space, and it's one you're always learning, right?
Is there when you're that kind of that subject matter expert, right? You're the tech guy that you're a service provider to the federal government. Are you able to template that, or does it have to be totally tailored to that function, whether it's health and human services or whether it is agriculture or whether it is defense?
Sure. Actually, now this is one of the fun parts about it, right?
Okay.
Is that a lot of these enterprises and these agencies have the same technological issues. They all have a lot of the same problem.
Yeah.
They just do it under different acronyms.
Okay, that makes sense. Yes. Oh my gosh!
And so the other part is that I enjoy doing, and a lot of our folks in our portfolio companies enjoy doing, is kind of looking at it like a game and a puzzle. and you're sort of putting these puzzle pieces together, and you're like, okay, well, this thing that we do with this group of vendors that we work with fixes X problem, fixes a problem.
Okay.
And so, that problem is in repetition in a bunch of different other silos, but you're trying to understand like how to find the right person or talk to the right use case folks to tell them that, hey, this is something that can fix the issues that you're having.
We've had really good success with this X solution.
Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly it.
Wow.
And we really hone in on a lot of, I just call it use case selling.
Yeah.
Right. Use case problems. And we work on these use cases and, try to do the best we can to promote as far and wide as possible in areas like that. And it's worked out pretty well for us.
Has the being that it is the government, the federal government, and there's a changeover about every 4 years, does that really trickle down to the levels where you're providing service, where you're teaching somebody new these success stories and these solutions?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of a mix.
Okay.
I mean some things on the agendas, some things on agendas, trickle down to what we do. You see a lot of stuff going on day to day, just even in the news now.
Yeah.
But the other part is when you think about it, it's this getting elephants to dance scenario is a little bit hard to do.
Wow.
And a lot of these problems, there's just so large in scope that there's just a lot to do. And 4 years just doesn't really. I mean, I've been doing this for 27 years and I still hear some of the same problems. We just haven't got to them. And so, you think about it from that perspective. Sometimes it's just so big you can't impact everything. But if you're taking a few things like on your agenda items, you can definitely push that through.
I wouldn't think that these massive organizations are necessarily very agile, and tech. Something that was a big deal 90 days ago may not be a big deal now. And so you're having to balance that of the inagility of a corporate or of a governmental bureaucracy or any corporate bureaucracy, even your private clients, and just how the speed of tech.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, one of the things that the government, just due to its longevity and size, it has absolutely figured out how to do processes, right? The book for a startup is only 2 pages long, 2 pages thick, and you can make a decision and go. Yeah. And as you become older as a company and larger as a company, that book gets thicker and thicker and thicker, and so all of a sudden, in order to make a decision, you have to go to 5, 10, 15, 30 people in order to get signatures to get it done.
Sure.
Right? And that's just kind of how it gets built up. So there's always an issue with the decision piece of some of these things, like whether, technology goes so fast, like you said, that it really, I mean, we were talking about it several weeks back with, we used the term Moore's Law, right? About just you doubling every pretty much 6 months. Wow. And that's how fast technology moves. And so, when your procurement process, this is something that we always talk about in the gov space, but the procurement process can take 18, 24, 3 years to get done. And and by the time you actually get something, it's obsolete, right? It's obsolete. And so that's one of the challenges that those folks have to fight with all the time. And the best thing that we can try to do is, try to expedite the process and try to bring some of the, there's the tried and true technology side, but there's also the innovative technology side. So you're trying to educate people on both sides of that throughout this process, right? So you can kind of be able to build onto it going forward. And it has always been a challenge.
I want to hear this story of how you made the jump from Hewlett Packard and then the continuum to building your own business, and you built the business in Washington, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was fortunate enough, Joel, to experience, whether it was through HP or just multiple companies that I worked for over my career, whether they were DC based, whether it was I was overseas doing work, with on the tech side of the house, and it was such a great experience, and along the way, you ended up whether it's taking advantage of corporate programs, and I ended up getting an MBA, and I ended up kind of working on other things to kind of keep my education going. As I was growing in the tech space, I was also growing on the business side, business acumen, and the leadership paths. And one of the things I was working on, I finished my MBA, and then I got itchy again to go back and say, okay, hey, let me do a doctorate.
Wow.
Right? And I was doing that for a couple of years, and then I eventually just decided I was good to go. But part of this doctorate piece, this process was working on a dissertation, right? Putting a thesis together and trying to prove this thing out. And one of the things I was working on was my thesis was really around. I never forgot the name of it because it was a mouthful, but it was like it was economic and community redevelopment in post-industrial cities.
Well, that sounds familiar.
Wow. And I'll tell you what, when you're sitting in a hotel room in like Seoul, Korea, when you don't know the language and you're kind of like, okay, you have a lot of time to think about stuff like that, right? And so I ended up doing that and did a ton of research on it.
I was gonna say, was there a decent amount of research in that space in these post-industrial cities?
Oh yeah, tons of research. Tons of research. And so, being able to kind of build a plan around it, and eventually what I ended up doing was just implementing it, and I really did it on the side. And so really what I wanted to do was do some things in my hometown. It's not like it wasn't a secret. I mean, it sounded the title sounded great, but it was about Erie, right? And it was home, and I'd been gone for so long. I'm definitely a homer, so I was definitely homesick, and I was part of it too. And let's think about this. Mm-hmm. And I on the side personally, I started acquiring a couple of just small properties, Jeremy-sized properties, and try to get them fixed up.
Okay.
And so I was doing that on the side. And still doing my career in the tech space and learning and growing teams and building out businesses for other folks and companies. And eventually they kind of merged, because my last gig, I was the vice president of a division for a $1 billion company down in DC. I was running their cybersecurity and privacy division, and it got to a point where, I was sort of getting pulled in a couple of ways where, hey, there's this corporate path you can continue to go, but then there's this little passion thing that I had, this passion project, and unfortunately, the road wouldn't let me do both, and so that's when I sort of changed the road, right? Wow. And so once my time was done with that, I ended up pretty much taking my own dollars, and I said, okay, I'm just going to take all the stuff that I've learned, and I'm going to go out and buy a couple of companies, which I did, slammed them together, called them Fed Resources, and had them down in Virginia. Mm-hmm. It was actually...
And it was mostly in the cybersecurity space?
The companies that I had acquired were more of IT services.
Okay, gotcha.
But they had kind of the right bones.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you can go this path and build on and layer in some of my own expertise in those areas and kind of create a good business out of it. And actually, it was March 31st of 2018 when I acquired the companies. And so then in June, I moved the company up here to Erie.
In 2018.
2018. Wow. That's when we started hiring folks.
Oh my.
And so from that whole path, I'm a student of the game, right?
Right.
Of the tech space, the government space, all the cool things you get to do inside of working with the government, and then this little passion project of redevelopment. And part of that whole dissertation I was working on wasn't just about building or redeveloping some buildings in the city center or city core. It was about that plus jobs, plus economy, and things along those lines. And
that's a very large vision.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I looked a lot younger.
Well, just think about it. I mean, think about your buddies at prep, and it could go for any high school in Erie County, right? A lot of people, they get their degree, they go get their bachelor's, and they're gone forever. I mean, we have that brain drain, right?
Yeah, sure.
And somehow you got it in the pit of your soul that you needed to come back.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
Man, sometimes I wonder, because believe me, when I was leaving, I wasn't looking back, right? I was out the door and I was gone.
That was me. That was her.
Yeah, you couldn't get me out here fast enough, right?
Yeah.
and it was I don't know. I guess there was a few different things. Being gone. Being gone, it was one of those things where, obviously you got to experience the world and go around and check things out. This is actually a really good place to be. Erie, Pennsylvania, comparatively to everywhere else. It's not, 80 degrees and sunny every single day, and I get that, but there's a lot of worse places to be out there.
Sure. There sure are.
And of course, with it being home, there was always that affinity towards that.
But I feel like you felt agency, that you could turn a dial and improve, like make it better on the on the buildings, on the jobs, on the economic opportunity.
Yeah, that, but it also takes a team of people, and it also takes the right DNA of people in a company to do that as well. And again, one of the things I've always firmly believed in is the DNA around this area is a work hard, blue collar DNA. And we're not really at the stage with our ventures and our companies of creating intellectual property or stuff like that, like the folks in Silicon Valley or Boston do, or down at Carnegie Mellon. But we have a work hard philosophy, right? And that's just in people.
All year round, Frontier Home Products and Design has what you need to make your home comfortable and beautiful. Relax on a new timber tech deck designed by Frontier's experts. A new fireplace from Frontier Home Products Fireplace Gallery adds warmth and serenity to any home. Beauty and versatility at Frontier Home Products and Design Center, 4213 Peachtree, 5th next to the Bayfront Highway.
Frontier Home Products and Design Center. Discover a new frontier.
PA contractor number PA039007.
Get paid to drive. Start a new career behind the wheel at the EMTA. If you are looking for a high-paying and rewarding career with full benefits and paid training, stop by or apply online today with the EMTA. Plus, EMTA riders can now enjoy free Wi-Fi on new, clean, and environmentally friendly buses to travel all over Erie County. Visit ridethee.com for more information.
Get on board EMTA. Get on board EMTA. Get on board.
Quickfill gasoline is made right here in America. United Refining Company, who operates Quickfill, refines its gasoline from North American crude oil in Warren, Pennsylvania. When you buy United Refining Company gasoline at Quickfill, you keep jobs and businesses in America. And you keep American families strong. You don't need to send your money overseas when you buy gasoline. Buy American-made gasoline at Quickfill. Quickfill, driving America.
We're excited to have Jeremy Young. He's the CEO of the Federal Resources Corporation. That's just one of the organizations in your portfolio, right?
Yes.
So
that's
tell us a little bit about all the I should call them silos, but all the things, all the buckets that you're involved
in my schizophrenic way, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't make it easy on anybody. No, so we have a handful of companies at this point, all up here in Erie, because that's our intent. First part is, I would say our flagship company is called Federal Resources Corporation. So that is the company that works inside the government space that does cybersecurity and IT services.
Wow.
And that's been a great story for us, a great growth story for us. We have another company called Vector Resources. And you got a little trend right there about my creativity for naming stuff, right? But Vector Resources, that's a logistics and supply chain and professional services company that I get to work with my sister on.
Oh, cool.
And that company typically works inside of the Department of Energy.
Okay.
And so it's a lot of they do a lot of really, really cool projects. Just really, like I said, supply chain projects and just understanding, picking up a screwdriver from California versus having a truck tire in Florida and coordinating everything and how you move from one side of the country to the other, and it's a fascinating thing. And then we have another company, which we just launched this past fall, called CyberPro. And CyberPro is the one we're really, really excited about. It's really a small business consulting company. And with that small business consulting company, we've understood that one of the mitigations of having one of the areas to best mitigate around cybersecurity and protecting data and protecting your business is really around just education. Don't do this, don't do that. Just educating people with awareness.
Yeah.
And so that's an opportunity for us to go and work with small businesses and nonprofits and just help them understand the importance of clicking on this email and what you need to do from that point. And it doesn't sound like it's a lot, but it actually is. And,
sure
and
is.
There's I think when you talk about it, there's 36 million small businesses out there in the U.S. and in order to, when a small nonprofit of 10 people, have a particular mission and they have my credit card because I donated to them, I want to make sure my credit card is protected, but
Absolutely.
I really don't know sometimes, right?
Yeah.
My information, and those are things that we work with some of those entities. And then we have another company that part of that thesis was really also around, saying, hey, Mr. Mrs. Small Business, when you create your mission and your passion, the last thing you probably want to deal with is tech. So why don't you just outsource that and we'll just take that off your plate for you? And so, that's been something that's been really thriving for us as well. So,
what do you call that business?
It's called ISM, actually.
ISM.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I know there's a local ISM around here, so I probably owe somebody an apology there. But the reality is that with Fed Resources, we acquired a company probably about 6 years ago, and they were out of Maryland, and they were called ISM.
Okay.
And we've actually really absorbed all the resources of that company, except for the one thing that was left hanging there, which was ISM.com. And we didn't know what to do with it. You really weren't making three-letter .coms anymore
that's
for the internet.
worth a lot of money, that ISM.
And so we just kind of held on to it and
There
said,
we
hey,
go.
one of these days we're going to start something up and we're going to name it that. And so don't ask me what ISM stands for at this
Right.
stage. We're still trying to figure that one out, but we own the website, so we keep doing. So we built a business around that.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, and then again, the other piece. I mean, we have other companies that are built around like ours. Some of the real estate and development stuff that we have going on in the area.
Let's talk about that, because you have just entered into. You're taking over part of the Mercantile building. Is that
very
correct?
excited about that.
Talk about
very excited.
that project.
Well, it's number one, it's a project that's been really it's been out there for a long time. I mean, that Mercantile building, what a gorgeous building, and the investment that the city made and the state made to get that building to where it's at today was substantial. And from us, it was a piece where it made a lot of sense. Where I told you earlier, we first started at the cashier's house.
Yeah.
And then we were the third floor of the cashier's house, and all of that. And then we were over on 8th Street with a project that we redeveloped that building with. And we
was that the funky building?
The front building, right? It's like right next to the Family Dollar.
It looks like an I Am Pie kind of knockoff, right? I mean, something from the Louvre or whatever.
Yeah, it was a cool building. It's a cool building, and it was vacant for a long time.
Was it? Okay.
And so for us to go in there and redo it was an interesting project, but we outgrew that, and then we were looking for another space. And the Mercantile building was a building where I know that second and third floor, they were trying to lease that out or do something with it for years. And luckily, we talked to the owners and we were able to work something out and move in take over the property. Now we have to move into it and build it out and all that sort of stuff, right?
Wow.
But we're real excited about that.
That's fabulous. What's your timeline on that, you think?
Well, let me see. So if I'm putting it on the calendar, I'm usually saying September, October timeframe. But of course, there's a little project that we have that we were working on over on 8th and Chestnut that used to be the old Friendly Tavern back in the day.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Anyways, I said that was only going to take 6 months, and now fast forward 5 years later, and a global pandemic,
right?
It takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So that's almost done too. But but hopefully we don't have anything like that kind of disrupts the timeline there.
And again, you have full confidence that you have capacity for all of your utilities, all of your bandwidth that you need, right? I mean, I'm trying to reach a point of like saying, Erie has everything to make it a tech hub.
It does. Now, it truly does. And actually, what the other thing that it does have is the talent. It has a great talent pool. And, I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but the talent pool, I mean, the blue collar DNA, we might not be making as many as much on the manufacturing side as we used to as an area. However, that DNA still exists in folks. It's just coming in different areas and this tech space and this work hard space and things like that. We're able to take advantage of that as a company and find that type of talent that we're able to bring in and very, I'm very bullish on that space for us.
How strategic are your relationships with our local universities toward that end?
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had relationships with Mercyhurst. We've had relationship with Gannon and Penn State Barron. We attend their student recruiting sessions and engage that way for them. And
sure.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's really important. I think it's one of the things. If you look at the business plan that I had put together for Fed Resources years ago, I sat there and I said, hey, there's 25,000 college students within a 20-mile radius of this spot here. All we need is 100 of them, right? How do we get 100?
Right. Yeah.
So
sure.
And so we do those things to attract some of those talented students out of the universities. And it's amazing, you can buy enough pizza and all that sort of stuff and provide breakfast, and they actually do that, and they come on in. So it's great to see it.
I think one of the fascinating things about your story is that you've also, though, brought people from the district, from the Beltway to Erie, and they like it.
They do. I think they are out of the area where it's, I mean, I guess when you think about it, if you go to a restaurant and you go out to dinner and things like that, I mean, whether you go out to dinner in Northern Virginia or the DC area or go out to dinner here, there really isn't a big price difference. Mm-hmm. There really isn't. However, it's in the housing side of the house. Yeah. It's in the housing piece, right? And so, once people realize that, and then they realize the area itself, and they get acclimated to the area, they have the seasons, they don't have to worry about the traffic. I mean, one of the things that drove me out of that area years ago was just the piece of, I would be in a car 4 hours a day.
Oh my.
And that wasn't very fun.
Mm-mm.
No, it wasn't. And so, when our folks, some of our folks around here, our farthest commute's 20 minutes, right? And that's when you hit every light.
Yeah, right. Yes.
so
Yeah.
I like to remind folks about, put that in perspective a little bit. There's the, Erie thing, Erie way, but then there's also like the global thing of going, you could be in a car 2 hours each way. So that's,
wow.
Yeah.
I like to talk about clusters, and let's talk about, again, whether it is from your dissertation or this article that you printed, starting a software business, Silicon Valley or Pennsylvania, which was a pretty provocative headline here. And you list Erie as your number one target. Again, you are a homer, so we can fully expect that. But still, you make a full-throated defense of Erie having a strong sense of community that has motivated the creation of an entrepreneurial ecosystem. Everything a startup needs to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think Erie itself, and again, this is just being bullish on what's going on. There is definitely a different vibe around this town that there was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's attracting different people. I think I think some of the programs that are out there to help the startup community that didn't exist, whether it's the Beehive or even dollars available, like how the city gets behind folks with low interest loans, or the county, and all those types of tools that are out there for people to become, at least get started.
Yeah.
And I think you're seeing, I always call them kind of more, I'll call them splash plays, right? Like there's the companies that, the $1,000 here, is helpful for particular companies, which is great. And then the $100,000 helps a different type of company. Then the $1 million helps a different type of company. But you're starting to see all of these kind of hitting all at the same time, and there's an energy around that, and people are understanding of that. And I think when you get to the larger companies or the larger dollars, those are I'll just call them the splash plays.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I've had those conversations with folks where, hey, wouldn't it be great, to get behind something that encourages acquisitions, encourages bringing jobs here to Erie? I mean, I go, hey, we have companies identified that if there were programs available or more programs available that would, take away a little bit of the high expense debt, we'd have 50 or 100 more jobs here tomorrow. Right. Wow. Just because we could do that. And our company is built around integrating and integrations and bringing stuff in. So, I think there's another set of companies that can actually thrive even more so in that space. So
do you see clusters around? Obviously, you do a lot of work in cybersecurity, service providing, or, can you imagine Erie becoming a hub for small business service provision, this tech service provision?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, especially because we have low cost for even a call center. I mean, if you want a North America call center, that used to be kind of a thing for us,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. I think from our side, if you look at our businesses, we're very much around service and service oriented type of go-to-market strategies.
Logistics seems to be another one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, again, you think about what Jim Berlin does, what you guys do.
Yeah,
there's a lot there.
Absolutely, no, and they're very successful in doing it. And so, I think a lot, back in late 90s, 2000, I mean, there was always this conversation of the U.S. economy turning more towards white collar and service oriented type of activity versus manufacturing. And so, stuff like this has been in the works for a while. But I do think, Erie very much can thrive on things like that and opportunities like that.
What are the greatest obstacles that you see in really letting see your full vision come to fruition?
Yeah, you know what? I still think, there's a tendency for folks to the big city of Pittsburgh or the big city of Cleveland, the big city of Buffalo, right? Versus around here. I see that, and so there was a time where, and we're having a little bit more of a different mix nowadays. But in the beginning, it was folks that kind of worked for our companies were the late 20s type of demographic that had already gone to Pittsburgh and Cleveland and said, all right, I'm ready to go back home now and go do this. And then we would lose the students out of, Gannon or Mercyhurst who were like, no, I want to go to the big city, which I totally appreciate. I did it too. I get it. Right. And so, some of the things, whether it's the amenities that are around here that make it more attractive in those areas, right? To get, your 20-somethings, young professionals, more engaged here in the downtown.
It's that quality of life that, more 5 irons and hazards. I mean, seems like it, right?
I really do think that's true. I mean, and those are always the things that attracted me to DC back in that day too, right? Of just, getting out in the town. And of course, whether you look at it from the small businesses around here to like the Hazards or the, the 5 irons and, the Ascends, but the restaurants and that sort of thing, and having people actually, come to the downtown, because I know one of the challenges was always just kind of in the back of your head. You're like, okay, well, is it safe to be downtown? Are there, the police downtown and things along those lines? And I think a lot of that's really changed, and I think it's something that downtown as a community and business owners, we need to get together and make sure we're passing that communication on to folks, because I also think it's kind of like in everybody's head too, right? I mean, to get down here and do an experience down here, it's different than what it was even when I was growing up, right? So,
talk about what you feel is your responsibility or your agency to be a advocate or an evangelist for best practice leadership.
Yeah. I'm not really sure if I can ever say, it's going to be these 3 things. But what I can tell you is, for me personally, I was always just trying to make a difference and have it get noticed. And maybe it's a lead by example. And if you can get some momentum and something even from our end, then, the other people can witness that and get in line with it or help out with it.
Do you feel like people hear you when you preach this leadership gospel? Because I feel like that is one of we have some weaknesses with leadership a little bit here in certain sectors. I think mostly in the public sector. And so we're trying to build that up. And I think the private sector has a place for it.
Yeah.
To be a leader about leadership.
Well, yeah. Well, I think you see that a little bit more today. I mean, you have some of the things going on when you're pulling all the businesses together, and you're pulling some of these organizations to the infinite Eries of the world and those types of things. I think they're getting input from the business community in that. Sure. Would I love to have the voice heard more? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but the other part is that that's still not gonna have us move away from what we're here to accomplish, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I tell this to everybody. I mean, the easy answer for Federal Resources Corporation to be successful was to probably stay in Northern Virginia.
That would be the easy answer.
That's the easy answer.
Wow.
So the thing is of our companies, and that would have been the thesis for all of our companies, just to stay in a larger metropolitan area. It just so happens that I'm from here, and my CFO Doug Campbell, he's from here, and so we're like, hey, we're going to do it here, and so that's been the thing for us.
And people need to understand, this is no small enterprise. I think the most recent big announcement was, what was it, like close to $900 million contract with the feds?
Yeah. No, we've been pretty fortunate with some of our agency contracts, multi-year.
We're doing this at scale.
We're well into the 9 figures at this point with our enterprises on how we're doing business, and we're doing it here. And so it's a great story. I love being a part of the story. I think part of the thing that I need to do a better job is articulating more of that story to make Erie more of a destination for these types of companies. And as our portfolio continues to grow, and these businesses start to scale, because again, we're people who scale companies. As those continue to grow, hopefully it drives more of that destination feel, like you see in that article right there.
It is amazing to see where a well-established enterprise like Federal Resources could be one of those cluster makers to draw more cybersecurity, and along with the recent grads, and my gosh.
Well, it's the network too,
yeah,
right? Because we kind of talked about a little bit earlier around some of the other innovation hubs. That might not be Silicon Valley, but they might be Boston.
Yeah.
And working with companies out of there, working with those incubators. This is stuff that I've worked on and done before. I just did it in DC, right? But we can do it in here.
And capital will follow, right?
Absolutely.
Because that's the other part of this, is being able to get the capital you need. Well, I have less than a minute. I'm so grateful that you're able to take the time.
No, I appreciate it, Joel. No, thank you very much for the invite. It's been great, and I appreciate the opportunity to be out here and just talking about it.
It's a remarkable story, and I love how you bounced around, and as far as from the cashier's house to 8th Street, and now this significant development here right on the center of State Street, and bring your friends. Come on, all you Prepsters, Mercyhurst, Erie High, Strong Vincent, come back.
The city is open. The city is open.
The city is open as a tech hub and whatever we want to be. Jeremy Young, CEO of Federal Resources Corporation. What's your website?
fedresources.com.
You've been listening to The Joel Natale Show, Erie, Pennsylvania's daily podcast from TalkErie.com. Subscribe to our show on your favorite podcatcher and get involved by emailing joel@TalkErie.com.